Welcome to the Elevate podcast. This series focuses on elevating and inspiring women and girls into or to remain in the tech sector from the classroom to the boardroom. I'm Kellie Kwarteng, founder and CEO of Hythe and host of the show. Welcome to another episode of Elevate Women in Tech, where we celebrate and support the remarkable women driving innovation in the tech industry. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Abena Akuffo-Kelly, another award-winning EDIB consultant, politician, union activist, mentor and coach. Abena is a force to be reckoned with, championing inclusivity and challenging biases that hinder progress. Brace yourself for a thought-provoking conversation as we delve into the critical issues of bias and unconscious bias, exploring its impact and strategies for creating truly equitable and inclusive work environments. Abena, it's great to have you here today.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. Well, I suppose we'll do what I do with every guest that comes on the show.
Yep.
It would be great if you could give our audience a bit of an insight as to who you are and what is it that you do.
Right, okay. So most of my career, about 16 years of it, was spent as a computer science teacher. I'm one of those odd people who actually loves doing all sorts of different things. So my first degree was social anthropology and my second degree was computer science. And then I went on to teach computer science. And most recently, I moved out of that. I'm still a lover of computer science. I'm still a lover of making sure that girls in particular get into computer science. But now I do EDI consultancy. I teach non-specialist teachers of computer science the skills that they'll need to become computer science teachers, because as you might guess, quite a lot of people who have the skills and might do a computer science degree might not wish to move into teaching, but we really need those skills. Everybody starts their roles with a teacher, with somebody who trains them, and we need those people. So I help to try to increase the number of people who can actually teach computer science. I'm a councillor as well, so I'm a town councillor and a district councillor. I'm deputy mayor of Folkestone, where I live, and I chair the district council, which includes Folkestone and all of the outlying towns and villages around me as well. I'm a charity owner, so I run a charity called Repairs Together, and it's like a repair cafe. I provide free food for people, and then when they come in, they can fix their bikes. Mostly it's hoovers people bring, or vacuum cleaners, electrical equipment, laptops, mobile phones. They can get things sewn up. They can get budgeting advice. And they can do some kintsugi, which is Japanese artwork. But mostly the most important thing to me really is trying to inject intersectionality into everything that I do. And especially also trying to get more girls, because we need to start with girls. They're going to be the future. I know there's lots of people working with women, but we need to start with girls as well. And trying to get more of them into computer science. And really, really feeling like they can do it. They do belong. And STEM Learning does a course called I Belong, which is trying to get more girls into computer science. So I'm really for that.
Wow, what an introduction. How you fit all of that in, I don't know. I think there must be a few avenues that graces earth. I know that I reached out to you as I was keen to chat with you about the topic, obviously, that I mentioned in the title, which was exploring bias and the challenges that women and particularly women of colour face within the tech industry.
Yeah.
So before we jump into the topic as a whole, I think it would be a really good place for us to start with an explanation. And if you could explain what bias and unconscious biases are to our audience.
Yeah. Okay. So biases are basically prejudices that we hold. They could be unconscious, or they might actually be conscious, and we do them on an explicit level, and they have a major impact on our decision making. they are often stereotypes that are used as shortcuts to reduce our cognitive load in our daily lives. So we have a lot of decisions that we need to make, and we need to make them very quickly. Kahneman talks about fast and slow thinking. And so the majority of the thinking that we do is fast thinking, because if we were deliberate in the way that we thought about everything, it'll take us forever to do anything, so to reduce the cognitive load and to make things faster and make life easier for ourselves, we have these biases which are snap judgments that we make about people based on maybe our family. So our parents might have taught us to think in a certain way. It could be our education. It could be just our lived experience in general. It could be the country that we've grown up in, our socioeconomic background. There are all sorts of things. The media plays a major, major role in the biases that are formed. And just society and our cultural background in general defines for us what those stereotypes are, and we make those snap decisions based on the past experiences that we've had. So, for example, if we had a really bad experience with a Black person at some point in our lives, we will use that and we will store that as information. So the next time we meet another Black person, our shortcut will be, I'm going to have another bad experience.
Yeah, and thank you for giving us that intro there, because I think, like any of the topics that we talk about, understanding where we're coming from and what we're going to talk about is key for us to have a really good conversation on the rest of the podcast. What are some of the common examples that you're aware of from the coaching and the many roles that you play in the work that you do that typically negatively impact women and women of colour in the tech industry?
So the same sorts of things that impact women in everyday life and women in other industries impact women in the tech industry. Obviously, because the tech industry is traditionally seen as, people talk about tech bros, don't they? Is seen as a male industry. If, for example, we're talking about girls, and this applies to women as well, there's this assumption that women can't do tech.
Yeah.
So the actual statistics show, in regards to GCSEs, computer science GCSEs, girls very rarely choose to do it. I used to be a head of computer science, and I actually worked in a boys' school. It was very funny. I worked in a boys' school, so I was teaching boys, and my staff were men. So I was a woman who was heading computer science. But when I was in a mixed sex school, anytime I'll ask the girls, "Oh, are you going to consider computer science?" It'll be like tumbleweed. And the research shows that when girls actually choose computer science, they outperform the boys. They do considerably better than the boys. But they don't believe that they can, because the way computer science, the way the tech industry is presented to them is that it's not for you. It's too difficult. You can't do it. It's for the boys. And so there's an issue with self-efficacy. So self-efficacy is believing that you can do something. It's not the same as being able to do it or not being able to do it. There are some things that we can do, but we don't believe that we can do it. So we can, as women, do tech, we can program, but many women don't believe that they can do it. So because they lack that self-efficacy, they don't move into it in the first place. So quite a lot of the time, and maybe this is not what you were expecting, but the bias can actually start with ourselves, within ourselves, actually not even going for those roles in the first place. Like, I can't do that. I can't code. It's too difficult. No, it's not. It's like any other language, and especially if you learn how to code in one particular language, programming language, you can pick up other ones so much easily. So it's really, really, well, I think it's easy to code, but that might be because I'm a computer scientist. But it is. It's not as difficult as some men might make it sound like it is. But then when you sort of start moving into a role, what might happen is confirmation bias. So the people who make the decisions within the roles, the managers, the recruiters, most predominantly will be white men. And what happens with confirmation bias? Most people think that they're amazing people. So what they will do is they will choose other people who are like them because they want other amazing people working for their companies. So they will confirm that they are brilliant and they have the right skills by basically recruiting people who look exactly like them, possibly even went to the same universities as them, did the same degrees as them, have come from the same socioeconomic background as them. And so if the people who are making the decisions are white men, confirmation bias means that they're going to recruit more white men. And actually, sometimes they might recruit more white men from exactly the same universities. So you might find that there's a company and everybody seems to know each other quite well because they went to the same schools. Sometimes it can even go down to that level and the same universities. And then I remember when we were doing our preamble before this, Kelly, we were talking about name bias and how that can work in regards to, so I'm sure some of you might have heard of misogynoir. So in regards to women, we have the misogynoir, we have the misogyny, but also if you're Black, you have the racism. So it's that toxic mix of misogyny and racism that Black women in particular have to experience. So you might have the case that, oh, okay, the person might see your name and obviously they have a bias for certain names. So they might assume that you're female from your first name. But, you know, a name like Sasha could be male or female. So let's forget about that bit. So then they move on to your surname, and your surname may seem foreign to them, foreign sounding. They can't pronounce it. And in many cases, and this is a fact, some people will see that this person's not going to fit into our culture because obviously they're not English or they don't come from around here. So your application, they will file it under B for bin because you're not going to fit. You're not going to fit in. And they can just get that information just from your name. So some people actually change their names so they can actually go past that, you know, that stage where they actually get an interview. So we have that confirmation bias, we have the name bias, and then people never, when people think of bias, they don't actually realize that there can be types of biases which on the face of it seem like they're actually quite nice, but actually are limiting. So there's another one called benevolent bias, which is basically, and especially in regards to women, when, for example, people hold the door for you, they open the door for you because you're a woman, they feel like they're doing something, they're doing you a favor, they're being kind to you, or they might give you what some people see as, you know, positive discrimination because you're a woman, or positive discrimination because you're Black, or whatever. But what that actually does is it takes away your autonomy. It takes away your individuality. It takes away your right to be an individual who is actually skilled in your role. So when you get that job, people say, oh, you got that job because you're a woman, because you're Black, rather than you got that job because actually you were the best candidate for the job. So it's really important that we don't fall into that trap of thinking, oh, if we are more lenient because this person has a protected characteristic, then that's a good thing. Actually, you're taking away their power because somebody could have a protected characteristic and still have those skills. Don't recruit them because of the protected characteristics, because they are going to get a kickback when they're in that role. And it will just continue perpetuating that myth that people who are women, or people who are Black, or people who are older, or people who come from all of those different protected characteristics can't do the job unless they get a leg up.
Thinking of individuals and companies who are in that privileged position of hiring and recruiting within their organisations, what steps do you think individuals or companies could take to be more aware of these potential biases that you've just mentioned, and ways that they can look to mitigate that, and, you know, to help them create more inclusive and equitable work environment?
Right, okay. So it might seem really, really simple, but just being aware. So being aware of the fact that you are going to be biased, and we are all biased. It's as I said, it's a shortcut that we use, but there are certain biases which are of detriment, major detriment to people's life chances. There are other ones which, maybe you might laugh about. So, I have a bias against Marmite. I hate Marmite. I wouldn't eat it. But that's not going to affect anybody, really. I mean, it's my mouth it's going to go into. But, if you hate Black people, if you hate old people, and so therefore you never give them a job, that's going to affect their life chances. So being aware, because sometimes people don't even, I spoke about that slow and fast thinking, because people spend a lot of time doing the fast thinking, they don't even know that they have these biases in the first place. So actually slowing down your thinking and being deliberate, especially when you meet somebody who comes from a demographic that you are not used to.
Yeah.
Because that's when your biases are going to be at play, because all your reference points will be external from actually experiencing somebody like that. So you will be basing it on all sorts of things, and quite a lot of the time, for quite a lot of minoritized groups, there are lots of derogatory, negative connotations that are linked to those people. So slowing down your thinking and actually being really, really conscious. And, some of the reason that quite a lot of us make biased decisions is because, especially when you're at work, you're pressurized, when you're really, really stressed out, you've got, a meeting, a really important deadline coming up, you are going to make those fast decisions because you don't have time to be making those deliberate decisions. So when you're doing that recruitment, actually make sure that you give yourself sufficient time in the recruitment process to really think about the people who you've actually got, who have applied for the role. And that's going to mean that you can be more deliberate, you can do that slow thinking, you can be more logical in the way that you're thinking about people. The other thing that I talk about all the time, and I talk about intersectionality, and whenever I talk about intersectionality, some people hear intersexuality. I don't know why. Maybe they've got it on the brain. It's not intersexuality, it's intersectionality. And I want to explain it because I think some people don't understand it. And I explain it in regards to myself because I'm a very intersectional person. But you know what? All of us are intersectional. So I'm a woman, I'm Black, I'm also gay, I'm also neurodiverse. Now, I, as an individual, am the sum of all of my parts. I can't separate the fact that I'm a woman from the fact that I'm Black, from the fact that I'm neurodiverse, from the fact that I'm gay. When I manifest in this world and I experience this world, I experience it. Maybe sometimes especially because some people call me what's called straight passing. So people don't see my gayness. But for example, my Blackness, you'll see that straight away.
Yeah.
And so the way that I experience this world is going to be different from a white woman. So that's only one identity, one part of their identity that's changed, but they have a completely different experience from me. If the person is an older white woman, she's going to have a completely different experience from me because she's older and I'm younger. So I try to explain to people that biases are not based on this sort of flat structure of a person's identity, because a person has multiple layers of identity, and at each of those layers, different biases could be at play. So the benevolent bias could be at play in regards to the fact that I'm a woman. Another bias I didn't talk about was the horn effect. So the horn effect could happen because I'm Black and somebody's had bad experiences in regards to Black people. So all of these different biases work on an intersectional level. And what I want to make a point of is that even though I have all of those different things and I'm a Black person, I'm still an individual.
Yeah.
And every single person is an individual. And that's what's really, really important. That person is not a representative of any group. People want them to be, because again, it's that thing about shortcutting. Oh, yeah, okay, that's a Black person. Right, okay, good. We can tick that box. We got a Black person. No, I am me. I'm Abena Akuffo-Kelly. I am me. So you can't take that shortcut and think that you've met some sort of quota by recruiting me. Just see me as an individual. And when you really truly try to see every single person as an individual, that's when you actually go beyond and you actually become more equitable, because it's when we keep on lumping people into different groups that we start with that bias, and that bias is strong.
Wow. So much there that you put in, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think we are so quick. I've never really thought of it in that way of slow and fast thinking before, but when we break it down, like you said, in that simplistic way, a lot of what we do in life is about those shortcuts and those fast ways of getting to from point A to point B, whatever that may be that you're trying to do. But I think when it comes to people and cultures and environments where we're looking to really bring people together so they can be themselves, it is seeing those people as individuals, because like we said, there's so many elements to everybody that we meet. Trying to box in those certain areas is just not where we need to go. And if companies are truly looking to build really inclusive environments, it's looking at their people, at their future people as the individuals and the environments that they're looking to build. With that in mind, if we was to think just about leadership within organisations, because you know, I talk to a lot of companies, and a lot of companies are looking at how they can be more inclusive. And then when you start picking into things, it might be an initiative that's driven from HR, but then it doesn't go across the whole company, or it might be at the top and it doesn't come down, or it's at the bottom and it's not coming up. What role do you think, and the work that you do as an EDI consultant, what role does leadership play in setting the tone for addressing bias and creating that inclusive environment for a company?
Right. So definitely leadership has to set the tone. And when they set the tone, they have to set it on the strategic level. It has to become part of the mission statement. It has to be something which is measured on a regular basis. You know, companies might have a target in regards to the amount of money that they need to make and they want to make. EDI must be at that level. That's the level that it needs to be, because you know, you bet your bottom dollar, if somebody does not meet their sales targets, somebody's going to be on their back. Yeah, when it comes to EDI, if you don't meet your EDI target, oh, we'll try again next year. We'll try again next quarter. It shouldn't be like that. It should be, this is the target that we're aiming for. What are we going to do to get there? What are the steps that we're going to take to get there? How are we going to check? How are we going to monitor? What actions are we going to take if people are not meeting those targets? Because that's exactly what they would do in regards to any other sales target. And the reason I say this, and I say this all the time, and people always laugh when I say this, EDI is not some cuddly wuddly thing. It's not just about, oh, let's just be fair. Oh, it'll be so nice to be fair to people. There are statistics to show that companies that are more diverse in regards to their team, in regards to their board, in regards to their managers, actually make more money. The reason they make more money, so companies that actually have more women make it in the decision-making roles make more money. They make more money because they innovate. They make more money because they're going to be thinking differently from those companies which maybe have the same makeup of white men as every other company, because they have something different. It's a diversity of thought, and the whole thing about companies is you want that competitive edge. Your competitive edge is actually having lots of different people with lots of different ways of thinking, with lots of different types of lived experience, so that they will be able to think outside the box that you've got yourself into, because they have actually lived outside that box. And so because they can think differently, that means you're going to be able to create things which are different from other people and therefore make more money. So don't get it twisted and think, oh, it's about, oh, let's be cuddly wuddly. It's nice, it is cuddly wuddly, but you can also make more money from it. And when people start thinking about it in monetary terms, that's when it becomes more powerful. So it's not just about, oh, okay, yeah, it'll be good, it'll be nice to have, have that. It will actually make a difference to how your team and your company performs as well.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more there. I think I've done a talk recently, and it was why diversity and inclusion is key for companies. And obviously there's the obvious reasons, that the bottom point that I make is the fact that if it's bottom line that all you're focused about, then this is the reason as to why, because being more diverse will help you create services, you will innovate better, like you said, you'll create products that are reflective of your actual customer base, because the world is diverse. And if you're not building those products and those services with diverse teams, you're going to build products and services that are not fit for purpose, or they're only fit for the purpose of a smaller group of people rather than the wider population. Yeah, couldn't agree more with you there. If we could dive into kind of companies' hiring and promotion processes now, do you have any tips for companies to ensure that their processes are free from bias and provide equal opportunities for all? If we're looking at hiring, and more importantly, once we've got people in that promotion process as well.
I'm just going to say there is no way. There's absolutely no way to be free from bias. There will always be bias. So we can't lie to ourselves and say that there's always going to be bias. But there are steps that we can take to be less biased, and that's really, really important. So, for example, there are many people who may not have degrees who are sort of kept out of the market because they don't have degrees, because they don't have certain qualifications and so on. But actually, if you look at their skills and their competencies, they can actually do the job, and they can do it really, really well. And remember, I spoke to you earlier about people, confirmation bias, and people sometimes recruiting people from the same universities as them, or sometimes from the same areas as them, and so on. So one of the really simple things that you can do is just not look at CVs, not have CVs. So have a core of questions that you ask all candidates. You don't know their educational achievements. You don't know about, you're not going to be looking at their names. You're not going to include their names in the application. Things like, I know people want to pick up diversity monitoring and things like that, but perhaps not pick that up until the decisions have been made, after the decision has been made as to who they want to pick for roles. Because although those forms are supposed to be separate from the applications, people talk within companies, and it's possible that it might get out. So again, that's just being really, really strict to make sure that you reduce as much bias as possible. Don't ask any of that information at the beginning until you've actually met people and you've started on that process. And then, you can collect that data, because you can ask for it later. But so ask everybody the same questions, test them on the same competencies. So irrespective of what the experience they've had, because there's that bias against experience as well, and that impacts people who are younger. So that there might be somebody who's younger who is actually incredibly competent and could be an amazing hire, but because they're younger and they don't have experience, you don't recruit. So if you remove that barrier, then you can actually recruit people who might be younger than you usually recruit, who might not have the qualifications that you usually have, who might not have the same backgrounds, cultural, religious experiences as the people you usually recruit, because all of those opportunities for you to start bringing in those biases, you haven't had that opportunity because you can't see it. I'm not saying that also they might use certain idioms, and that will tell you that the level of idioms that they use will tell you how sort of entrenched in the culture they are. So you'll have cultural reference points, and if somebody can use those cultural reference points, you could use that to sort of identify, oh yeah, this person's probably English. So we can't. That's why I say you can't remove those biases. You can remove as many as possible.
Yeah. And I like the competency focused approach to interviewing, because I think sometimes that can be missed, and it's a simple way to really test someone's ability based on their actual competency for the role that they're looking to come in to do. No, 100%. And for the promotion process when someone in, do you have any tips for companies if they're seeking to be more fair and equal around promotions?
One of the things on my signature I put EDIB. So the B is for belonging. And one of the reasons that a lot of people hate when you start talking about EDI is, oh yeah, that's for the women, that's for the Black people, that's for the gays,
Yeah.
and it's for everyone, absolutely everyone. Because when I talk about that intersectionality, anyone can be intersectional. Just because you're a white man doesn't mean that you don't have levels of intersectionality. So you might be somebody with mental health issues.
Mhm.
You might be somebody who's a carer for a child, or maybe your partner at home. So when you get home, you're going to have to deal with that. So you've got that as an added pressure on your time and also on your mental health as well. So actually making sure that every single aspect of a person's existence is actually considered. So instead of, because quite a lot of companies have groups for, the main protected characteristics. So they have an LGBT group, they have a women's group, they have, a group for people from ethnic minorities and so on. But we don't consider, as I said, things like mental health. We don't consider things like menopause. We don't consider things like age and so on. So when you allow people, everybody, to belong, then that issue with, because a lot of the time people don't get promotion because they don't fit in the culture. So you've managed to get into the role, but to get to the next level, like a game, you need to actually be able to fit into the culture of the management, for example, because they might have a slightly different culture from the people who are in the other roles within your organization. If everybody is given the opportunity to belong, it's not going to be the case that you're going to have to start acting a slightly different way or fitting in with a slightly different way of thinking to be able to actually get to that level. Because everybody, we're on a flat structure, and everybody, irrespective of their multiple identities, can actually fit into that structure. So it's not like, right, to get to the next level, I'm going to have to start operating in a different way, speaking in a different way, talking to different types of people. It's me just doing what I do and doing it well is going to allow me to actually move on to the next level, rather than these sort of hidden hoops that you're going to have to jump through that nobody actually knows about unless they're in with the in crowd and they've actually had who wants to, if they're in the clique, then they already know, oh yes, I need to go and play golf with such and such person, and then I know that then that person might want to sponsor me, and then because they'll sponsor me, then I'll be able to get through. And some people, especially if you are from these minoritized groups, especially if you're a woman, you're usually not in that space to be able to have that opportunity in the first place.
Yeah.
And this sort of quite a lot of companies, and the way that the corporate world is set up is based on the way that men succeed. And so because of that, the ways that women try to operate and try to interact with other members of their community, that isn't seen as being actually of benefit. But when the way that everybody operates and everybody communicates is seen as of value, if somebody's neurodiverse and perhaps they don't like eye contact, perhaps they're not brilliant when it comes to having conversations, they're not going to do the networking, they're not going to do the chit chat, but you see the value in the work that they're doing irrespective of that part, and so they can still progress. So it's about, actually, it goes back to what I said before, appreciating the individual and the value that they add as themselves, as their complete authentic selves, irrespective of anything else that's going on in the organization.
Perfect. I love that. Being able to be your authentic self. It's a journey. I know when I first started out in my career, I definitely wasn't my authentic self. And it took a while to realise, because I worked in a very male dominated environment, that actually understanding what made me unique gave me the competitive edge over the men that I worked
That's your
with.
USP.
Yeah, that was my USP.
Yeah.
But at the time, I didn't think it was. But then when you realise that, and then you can bring your full self to opportunities and you get comfortable, but it is a journey, and it is tough. So it is one that I'm sure people can relate to that might be listening into right now, but it does get better, and you do become better at being able to do it and believe in yourself and everything else.
Comes that sometimes that comes with experience as well, in regards to being in a role for longer, so you're not scared that if you are your authentic self, they might not like it and you might lose your role. When you know that you've got your feet under the table, you've been there for a while, you've had several successes, you know that people respect you. That's why you did exactly the same thing, Kelly. You waited, and then you were able to feel more comfortable to be your authentic self.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, because it was when I started to progress and become more senior that I was able to definitely do that. And Abena, you work with a lot of companies. Obviously, you offer consultancy. So in terms of some of the common challenges or roadblocks companies face when they're trying to address issues of bias and create more inclusive environments, what are some of the common things that you're typically going into organisations to support them with?
So usually there's a pushback in regards to there's not enough time to embed this. We've got other things which are priorities. This isn't a priority. The company is going to be able to succeed without us doing this.
Yeah.
So if we have some capacity, we have some contingency time, maybe we finish a project early, we can add it in as something which is, it's nice to have. Rather than actually this is something which is really important and should be embedded into everything that we're doing, because as I said before, it will add that value in itself. So when you're going through the processes, obviously it's so much easier. Inertia means it's so much easier to just carry on with what you're already doing, because you obviously you don't need to invest anything in carrying on with what you're doing. And so sometimes it seems like that initial investment seems quite costly, and that it doesn't actually pay, but it does pay. If you do it properly, it will pay by, as I said, allowing people to be authentic, so therefore they'll be able to innovate, therefore you'll be able to make more money, because you will have that competitive edge that other people won't have because they haven't actually done that investment. It might not pay back straight away, but you know what? Most investments don't pay back straight away. Most investments, you have to work at them. So that's one of the things. But also it's this thing about it's only for minorities, so it means that other people feel like it's not something which is part of their experience. It can lead to resentment. People think, right, okay, so this person's coming in and all they're doing is they're just dealing with a really small niche group of people, and we're spending all this money on that niche group. And that's why I spoke about belonging earlier, because belonging is about every single person in that organization. So we're not just doing something for the niche group. The analogy I like to use is that subtitles were introduced for people who were had hearing impairments, so obviously could not hear the sound. But I use subtitles all the time. We use subtitles to translate. I use subtitles because most of the time when I'm watching a film, it sounds like they're mumbling to me. I don't know what they're saying. So I always have the subtitles on. Just because something is introduced for a certain group doesn't mean it's going not to be advantage to other groups. If something is good, like we're all humans, aren't we? So if something is good for one set of humans, to be honest, it's going to be good for everyone.
Yeah.
So it's actually getting out of that mindset of, oh, it's only for the minorities, it's only for a niche group of people. By a company becoming trauma informed, by a company being more informed about people who are neurodiverse, by a company actually including belonging as one of their strategic goals, that is actually going to improve things for everybody, not just those niche groups that people think it's going to improve things for. And also, one of the things that people usually think as well is that by doing that, and I said about this positive discrimination, people think it's going to lower standards, and so that's an issue as well. Oh right, yeah, if we do EDI and we're going to try to bring in and make sure our teams are more diverse, that means we're going to be recruiting some people who actually don't cut the mustard. They're not good enough, and we're just recruiting them just so we can say, oh, we're diverse.
Yeah.
But that's why I spoke about, obviously there are going to be women who are incredibly competent in the roles that they're doing. You do not have to just, find a woman, just walk out of the office, find a woman. Oh, woman. I know women need jobs. Let's come in and start working here. It's no. That's not how it is. But you need to actually lay the ground so that women can apply for your roles, and then you choose the best women. You choose the best, neurodiverse person. You choose the best person who happens to be older. You don't choose them because they have those protected characteristics. You choose them because they're the best person. But by actually being more diverse in your recruitment processes, you will actually give them the opportunity to shine, and so that they can be recruited as well. So those are some of the issues. But I hope I've explained that some of the solutions aren't as complex as people might think.
Definitely. And I think the one that you mentioned there, making sure that companies make it a strategic priority that is as equal to some of the key big ticket items that typically will be put forward. So if it is about profit or revenue or whatever it may be, that if EDI is a core thing that someone's looking to impact, that sits up there with those strategic key priorities as well. And I couldn't agree more. And it is that long-term view. It's not going to change overnight. But to have people truly feel welcome and belong somewhere, it's a journey, and it's going on that journey and being committed to the process. And I think this brings us quite nicely on now to your organisation. So Kaena Consulting, would you like to share with our audience a little bit more about the companies that you support and what services that you typically deliver when you're going into organisations?
Okay, so I was speaking to you before we started recording about why I gave it the name Kaena. So Kaena is from the Tree language in Ghana, and that's my father's language. My mom has a different language. She uses Ga, and it means light or candle, to illuminate. And so I want to illuminate people. As I always say when I put in my bio, I want to inject intersectionality into every discourse. So what I do is I go in, quite a lot of the time people might want one-off training, and I try to steer them off that, because one-off training is not going to deliver the impact that you want. People will say, wow, that's brilliant. I really love that. I haven't thought about that like that before. And then, like I said before, there's no metrics to measure the impact, the changes that you're going to make. And so people will just, because we are like this, we'll just slip back into inertia. We'll slip back into the easy ways of working, the shortcuts that I was talking about, because we can. Because there's nothing which is forcing us not to. So quite a lot of time people do ask me for sort of the short-term wins that they want. I do unconscious bias training, and people seem to really love my unconscious bias training, because one of the things I always do, and I've said it throughout this, is that we're all biased. And even though I deliver training on unconscious bias, I am not a saint, and I have my biases, and it's human nature. But it's this thing about becoming conscious of your biases, and actually, when you know that it's going to impact on somebody negatively, making a conscious decision to actually work on that. That's what I talk about. I'm not about beating people over the head with a stick and saying you're an awful human being. And what people really love about my training is that they say it makes them feel empowered, and they've never been on bias training or any type of EDI training which actually makes them feel empowered, because I talk about the fact that whether you come from a place of privilege, so if you're a white man, or you come from a place where you see yourself as a minority, because of your intersectionality, there are certain parts of your identity that are privileged. And you can actually, and there are certain parts of your identity that can be seen as minoritized. You can use both of them to your advantage. So, for example, if you are privileged, myself, my privilege comes from my level of education, the way that I speak. People make the assumption that I'm quite intelligent because of the way that I speak. I believe I am quite intelligent, but you could have this accent and not be intelligent. It is possible. So I can use that to my advantage, because I can get into certain rooms just by the way that I speak that perhaps another person might not be able to get into. And when I get into that room, I can try to bring that person along with me. Because I'm Black and I've got into certain areas that other people haven't been able to get into, I can actually speak to people who are from those minoritized groups to support them, because I understand maybe the barriers that they will have and that they would need to, and the hurdles that they'll have to jump over to get to that same place as me. So although for many it will be seen as a minority issue and I'm minoritized and it's not a privilege, actually it becomes a privilege, because I've been able to get into those spaces, and therefore I will be able to help somebody else to use my privilege of the fact that I'm in that space to help them to get into that space. So those are some of the things that I do in my training. Obviously, I do neurodiversity, mental health, trauma, gender, LGBT. So I can look at all of those things and I can create a whole plan for you. I can create a series of training sessions which will lead to educating your team, so that we can move from what I was talking about before, the unconscious, people saying that I'm unconscious about my bias, to being conscious about your bias, and then actually knowing what you as an individual, because an organization is made up of the individuals that are in it. So as an individual, you can make a difference. One of the things I talk about, and I think some people think, oh, this is so simplistic, and quite a lot of my strategies, I say it to them, and they're like, oh God, I haven't thought about that before. But actually, a really, really, really simple strategy is just smiling at people. Just smiling. Acknowledging people, and that fits in with that belonging bit that I was talking about. Sometimes as a minority group, the reason why you don't feel like you belong, the reason why you feel like a really simple microaggression is people just ignoring you, not acknowledging you. You see them saying hello to other people but not saying hello to you. The difference it will make to somebody who's always ignored, is never acknowledged, you smiling at them, acknowledging that they're there, that they're walking down the corridor, asking them how they are, and actually stopping to listen to their answer, not asking them how they are and then continue on your trajectory and they just say, yeah, I'm great, because you don't actually care. You ask them how they are and genuinely want to know. That makes a difference. It sounds so simple, but we're human beings. Organizations are made up of human beings, and human beings like to feel like they belong, like to feel like they've been acknowledged, like they exist, that they're more than just a number, an employee number.
100%. People are companies' biggest assets and most important assets, and normally the most overlooked asset that people have, because they are seen as a number or can be replaced or whatever it may be. So that's great, and it sounds like you're doing it sounds like you're doing some amazing work. And anybody that would like to connect with Abena, obviously her details will be provided on the show notes of the episode, so please do reach out via LinkedIn and the details that we'll provide. We're right at the end of the episode now, so we're at the final question. So my final question today for you, Abena, is, what advice would you give to the women listening in who are navigating careers in the tech industry, who may face various forms of bias, and how they can overcome that to help them excel and move forward within the industry?
Very simple. Keep on going. Don't give up. when you give up, then the detractors have won. It's not going to be easy. But nothing that's worth doing is actually easy, is it? And sometimes there will be times when you would have tried all sorts of different routes to get where you want to get within a particular company, and it's obvious that you're not going to move up to the next level. And if you come to that, there is no shame in actually saying, no, I need to leave.
Yeah.
Because where you might be, they might not appreciate you, but there might be another company that does. Or you can create a space for yourself to be appreciated. And you will be really, really surprised. There are so many other women who might have got where you want to get, who would be willing to help you.
Yeah.
It's, again, I always say the most simple things, but they are really quite straightforward and they do work. If you want to get into a particular role, you want to get into, or you want to move up to the next level, go onto LinkedIn, search for people who have that role, search for women and men. There are allies. There is such a thing as allies, and speak to them. Say, could I have a call with you? Could I just discuss how you got into this role? Is there anything that I'm not doing that you think I could do to be able to move up? Is there anything? And you will be surprised how many people are happy to help. You might send, you can just have one message that you've written and you can send it to multiple people. Lots of people ignore you, but there'll be one or two who don't ignore you. And those one or two will be those people who really are invested in other people's careers. They don't know you, but they really want to make a difference. They might be another woman who maybe went through the same thing that you're going through and told themselves, actually, I'm going to give other women a leg up. I'm going to give them the shortcut. Maybe it was harder for me, but I don't mind sharing the shortcut, because the more of us that are in that room, the more of us that are in that tower, the more power we're going to have collectively. We're going to make a difference to the world, because there's nothing right about a very, very, very small minority having all the power in tech. One of the things I always say is that women, obviously, we're, strangely enough, we're not a minority, but we are treated like a minority. You would believe that we were, because we are basically treated like a minority, which is, it just blows your mind, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And when we look at the people who have the power in this world, there are people who are own tech companies who have more money, more influence, more power than some countries. And they are men. They're white men in particular. If we as women do not get into those spaces, we are actually going to be even more minoritized. We're going to lose even more of our power, because we know how much power is in the hands of people who are in tech. They have more power than many other people in other companies. So we need to get into those spaces. We must get into those spaces, and we must not give up trying to get into those spaces. And once we do, we need to carry on helping other people, not just women, but other people from other types of groups, because tech is not just the future, it's our current. It's the power, it's where the power is right now. And if all of us, every single type of demographic, is not involved in the decision making in the tech industry, then we are going to be at a loss. We're going to get more and more and more minoritized and lose more and more and more power. So it's not just women, it's anybody has to be there and has to be at that table making the decisions for all of us. Look at what's going on with AI. We need to make sure that everybody is there to make a decision about AI, because that's going to affect all of us.
100%. And I think your advice there that you gave at the end, that keep on going and don't give up, and the LinkedIn tip, 100%. I think, from my experience as a woman in tech space that I started engaging with, you would be surprised the amount of women and men in very senior positions that are free and willing to give their time to help others through. It's just that confidence to reach out. And like you said, create yourself a template, Start finding the people on LinkedIn that you want to go to and just send it. Don't have that fear. Just send the message out. Someone comes back to you, great. If someone doesn't respond to you, move on to next. Because someone will help you. Thank you for today, Abena. It's been great having you on board. I think you've given us some really insightful thoughts into the work that you do. Some really good discussion around, what organisations, what individuals can do as a step to make and seek change, and be different and be aware of their biases. Because, like you said, we all have biases, but it's understanding what they are and then how you can challenge them yourselves. Not waiting for your company to make those big changes. What can you start doing from within, and then what bigger organisations can start doing themselves as well. And for companies seeking that true inclusion, it is that ongoing commitment. It is that commitment to changing processes and fostering environments where everybody feels welcome, that everyone feels like they're belonging and they belong within those organisations, and that they truly feel valued, heard, listened to, and everything else. So I really appreciate you talking to me today. It's been fantastic. And thank you for your time.
No problem at all. Thank you for your time.